آزادی بیان
言论自由
Free speech.
If I may, two last questions. One is, we have some interesting material on the site about the problem of language bubbles. That in a sense, the greatest frontiers on the web are no longer the state frontiers, but they're the language frontiers. That the English speakers talk to the English speakers, the Chinese speakers to the Chinese speakers. Now, you have developed something called the Semantic Web. Could you tell us a bit about that and whether that also helps to overcome the problem of language bubbles?
Well, it does in some ways, but not completely. It doesn't allow people to suddenly talk as with a sort of Douglas Adams Babelfish area. But it does. But one of the nice things about data, if you put spending data out there, when you create an ontology of terms for what what things are being spent on, or for just terms like sort of total and and amount and date and things like that, those terms are generally international standards, and the software in different countries and for servicing people with speaking different languages can be driven can have glossaries. And in general, the RDF technology, the semantic web technology, does encourage you when you make an ontology of terms to put labels on the terms in multiple languages. So then automatically, when somebody's looking at this data with a client on a different server than using a different language, then they automatically sort of bridge the language barrier. Yes, language is a barrier, but in a way, culture is the barrier. So you can have people who speak the same language, but, for example, the Catholics and the Protestants in Northern Ireland, yes, they spoke the same language, principally, but they may not speak to each other at all. Or to a certain extent, unfortunately, in the United States, when you look at the Democrat and the Republicans,
blue and red,
they just they don't link each other to each other's blogs. They're worlds apart. They have very different ways of using words. They have very different ways of just analyzing situations. They have different worldviews, different world models, and there's very little interoperability between them, even though they use the same language. So what's interesting are the cultural barriers. So the interesting question is, when you go online, are you actually on any given day bridging a cultural barrier? One of the things I suggested in this light, the last web conference, is that the idea of a stretch friend, that our software tends to suggest to us friends which are mathematically calculated to be very close. They're friends of friends already, or they're people who've read the same papers or been to the same conferences. And so if we accept all those friends suggested by the system, we will make our knot of friends more and more knotty until we just until when we go to a party,
KNOT.
KNOT, yes. Yeah. When we go to a party, it's great, but we don't really actually meet anybody new. It's great because we meet all the same people, whoever's party we go to, because we're all of the friends which we could have met, we've already decided to formally make into our proper friends. So so a stretch friend is, the system could throw up every now and again, say, well, Timothy, now you've talked to all these people to make these interviews, and that's all very well, but now I want you to go and interview somebody who's not online at all, just isn't in your book, isn't in your address book. They are academic like you, but they only study poetry, and they're of a different religion, or maybe they're very, very similar to you, but they are of a different religion, or they're very similar to you, but they speak Chinese. So we'd like you to bridge the Chinese barrier. You're going to have to learn some Chinese. Maybe learning another language is a big stretch, but just learning, maybe for example, an engineer who's used to a situation which has been very dominated by men, make the point of going to talk to a woman engineer in your field. To some, maybe if you've been used to go and talk to a Muslim, go and talk to somebody who differs by one dimension. So I think when we look at the web, the question is it helping us, individual people dedicated to humanity as a whole?